Okay, hi everyone. This is Mr. Devereaux, and I'm going to be going over lesson 62 today for Algebra 1. Hope everyone's hanging in there. I just found out the news that every non-essential business is closed, so it's going to get even more boring than it was before. All right, lesson 62. This is square roots, higher order roots, and evaluating using plus and minus. First, it starts out with a lot of square roots. It says that, and it's a very smart idea to memorize about the first 15 numbers and their squares. So I wrote down, to save time, I wrote down the squares 1 through 15 right here. So, this is basically saying the square root of 16, the square root of 9, and these are all the numbers that are, 1 through 15. The square root of 225 is 15. That's the one I always forget is the square root of 196 is 14, or 14 squared is 196. So anyways, it's good to memorize these because they'll come up a lot during your math career. Anyway, what it also gets on to saying is, obviously the square root of 25 is 5, and if you square that, it's going to be 25. So in other words, the square root of x squared is going to equal x. Okay, and that's what this says right here. I just put it in with the numbers. So moving on to the next part of the lesson. This is also true with higher order squares. Okay, so if I have the cube root, and it has cube root and the fourth root. If I have the cube root of 8, that's going to equal 2. In other words, when it says cube root, it's saying 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, right? If it has the quad root of, say, 81, okay, that one would be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 9, 27 times 3 is 81. Okay, it's not the quad root, sorry, it's called the fourth root. For some reason I called it the quad root, but it's the fourth root. Okay, moving on to our next one. This doesn't get too difficult. It wants to know, like, if we have two numbers, if we have a number, we have the square root of, say, 10. What is the square root of 10? Well, I don't know what the square root of 10 is. You can figure out using a calculator. If you do use a calculator, you'd hit the number 10 and then you'd push the square root button. But this is going to be a really ugly number, right? I don't know what it is, but if I look up here or I think about it in my head, well, I know the square root of 9 is 3 and the square root of 16 is 4, and 10 falls somewhere in between there. It's right on the, it's probably going to be the lower part of 3, 3.1, 3.2 or something like that. But it'll ask you, one of the questions on the test will be, between what two numbers does the square root of 27 fall? And you'll have to figure it out. Well, the square root of 27 falls somewhere between the square root of 25 and the square root of 36, right? The numbers of 5 and 6. So it'll say, well, the square of 5 is 25. The square of 6 is 36. So it's somewhere in between the numbers 5 and 6. That's one of the questions it'll ask you. Okay, and you have to figure that out. They usually, at this level of math, they're not going to get into, into such a big number where it's really difficult to find out. But they just want you to be able to process that information. Okay, so we are moving on to, let's see, the cube root, the fourth root, right? Oh, okay. They had one kind of strange one. I think we've seen this before. It was the cube root of negative 27. So some number times itself is going to equal negative 27. What is that? Well, it goes 3 times. Negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is going to equal negative 27. Right? That was one of the questions. I feel like we've done that before. The last part of this lesson, it gives an example. -2 squared, -2 squared, plus -3 in parentheses squared, and then it has a plus or minus sign, the square root of 4. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this for a second, but if you remember from evaluating these, it's a hawk flying overhead. All right, -2 squared. Now this is without parentheses. Without the parentheses, this is 2 squared, and because this this negative sign is on the outside of it without parentheses, you're going to take the opposite of 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. You take the opposite of it. This one ends up being -4. All right, now when it does have parentheses, -3 in parentheses squared, that means -3 times -3. This one means 2 times 2, then take the opposite of it. This one is saying -3 times -3, which we all know is +9. Now it says, we all know the square root of 4 is 2, okay? It's going to say plus or minus 2. So we have -4 plus 9, which is 5. -4 plus 9 is 5. Plus 2, okay? 5 plus 2. So that's going to, 5 plus 2 is going to equal 7. Now we still have 5 right here. We're also going to figure out what it is 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 we know is 3. So there are 2 answers to this problem because of that plus or minus sign. Okay? That plus or minus sign makes the answer 2 answers, which are 7 and 3. Okay? That is the lesson 62. It's not too hard, and the rest of the lesson will give you some more practice on the other lessons that we've done. Please stay on top of it and turn it in, hopefully online in the turn-in box. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. By the way, I'm going to be doing some baseball videos. I'm going to be going over some proper throwing mechanics, pitching mechanics, so you guys can maybe go outside and play catch with your dad or your brother or your sister. Anyway, I thought that'd be fun to do. See you next time. Bye.